진짜 한국에선 어떻게 먹는지 알려줄까?
K-바비큐? 신김치랑 먹어야지.
치킨? 치맥 페스티벌은 처음이지? 김치?
종류만큼 먹는 법도 가지각색.
김밥? 시장에선, 산에선, 바다에선 이렇게.
국밥? 취향 따라, 입맛 따라.
이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸? 요즘 한국에선 어떻게 노는지 알려줄까?
한국에선 아이돌이 되어볼 수도, 인생 커널을 찾을 수도 있지. 제일 핫한 포토 스팟은 여기. 한국은 분명 너에게 새로운 영감을 줄 거야.
이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸?
모르겠으면 해도 돼. 뜨거운 태양 아래 굳게 뻗은 내 머리 어느새 curly해 curly해 curly해. Single moment, I could be your love, baby.
In our headlines on this Wednesday, December 4th, here in South Korea, President Yoon declares martial law in a surprise TV announcement Tuesday night before lifting the measure 6 hours later, that is early Wednesday morning, following a parliamentary vote against his declaration. And senior staff members at the presidential office, including Chief of Staff Chung, Jin-suk, share intentions to step down earlier on this Wednesday, but President Yoon has yet to accept their resignations. Also, Korea's short-lived martial law sees the South Korean won weakening against major currencies and shares of Korean firms and global stock markets plunging before regaining some ground. We start here in South Korea, where martial law was invoked and revoked over the span of 6 hours. Our correspondent Oh Seong covers the timeline of the dramatic events that took place overnight.
President Yoon declared an end to martial law at around 4:30 a.m. on Wednesday, lifting the measure he announced just hours before amid what he called attempts to overthrow the country's democratic system.
존경하는 국민 여러분, 저는 어제 밤 11시를 기해 국가의 본질적 기능을 마비시키고 자유민주주의 헌정 질서를 붕괴시키려는 반국가 세력에 맞서 결연한 구국의 의지로 비상계엄을 선포하였습니다. 그러나 조금 전 국회의 계엄 해제 요구가 있어 계엄 사무에 투입된 군을 철수시켰습니다.
Following the announcement, the cabinet passed a motion to lift the martial law 6 hours after the president ordered the decree, citing pro-North Korea forces and opponents of the state paralyzing South Korean democracy.
친애하는 국민 여러분, 저는 북한 공산 세력의 위협으로부터 자유 대한민국을 수호하고 우리 국민의 자유와 행복을 약탈하고 있는 파렴치한 종북 반국가 세력들을 일거에 척결하고 자유 헌정 질서를 지키기 위해 비상계엄을 선포합니다.
In an emergency address to the nation, the South Korean leader said the current opposition-led parliament is incapacitating the functions of government, thereby disregarding the livelihoods of citizens. He noted how the opposition Democratic Party of Korea has filed 22 motions to impeach state officials since its inauguration and continues to intimidate judges and aims to paralyze the executive branch. Also, referring to the opposition's push to pass a reduced budget bill in Parliament, Yoon said this compromises core state functions, including public safety measures.
예산까지도 오로지 정쟁의 수단으로 이용하는 이러한 민주당의 입법 독재는 예산 탄핵까지도 서슴지 않았습니다. 국정은 마비되고 국민들의 한숨은 늘어나고 있습니다. 이는 자유 대한민국의 헌정 질서를 짓밟고 헌법과 법에 의해 세워진 정당한 국가 기관을 교란시키는 것으로서 내란을 획책하는 명백한 반국가 행위입니다.
He deemed martial law a necessary measure to protect the freedom, safety and sustainability of the nation and to ensure a better future for the next generation. This was followed by the military announcing a set of measures, including the suspension of political gatherings that could stir social confusion, the return of the country's striking medical staff within 48 hours, and the control of media and publications under the martial law command. Under Article 77 of the South Korean Constitution, the president may declare martial law in the event of war, an armed conflict, or a national emergency level situation, with the use of military forces to address military needs or to maintain public order and safety. Martial law can also be lifted through a majority vote in the parliament according to Clause 5. It was the first time in 44 years for martial law to be declared in South Korea. The executive measure has been called 16 times, including 12 instances of emergency martial law in South Korea's modern history. While repealing his initial decree, Yoon urged the National Assembly to immediately cease its repeated push for impeachments, legislative tricks and budgetary obstructions that paralyze the functions of government. Oseong, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, soon after the declaration of martial law, opposition lawmakers and members of the military who had been deployed to the National Assembly engaged in scuffles, fueling much public concern. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung has details.
President Yoon-seol's sudden, unexpected declaration of emergency martial law, the first such declaration since 1979, surprised civilians, leaving them in disbelief.
I'm a bit stunned right now, and honestly, I'm not sure if this is the right thing. It's so unexpected, and I don't really know what to say.
Actually, I don't know what's happening right now. I just my friend asked me what happened in Korea,
Right after President's declaration, the Defense Ministry shifted to contingency mode. Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun, who reportedly proposed the president to issue martial law, ordered a meeting of key military commanders and put the military on alert. Air Force units, including fighter jets, were also deployed for surveillance activities and patrol missions. Soon after, General Park An-soo, the Army Chief of Staff, was named the leader of the Martial Law Command, and at 11 p.m., he issued the first martial law proclamation banning all political activities, placing media and publications under the Martial Law Command's control. As lawmakers attempted to gather at the National Assembly complex, troops attempted to breach the building, with helicopters flying overhead at around 11:50 p.m. Armed soldiers attempting to enter the main chamber faced resistance from parliamentary aides who blocked the entrance with desks and chairs and sprayed fire extinguishers. Some soldiers were even spotted breaking windows to get in. The standoff continued until 190 lawmakers from both ruling and the opposition parties unanimously passed a resolution at 1 a.m. to demand the repeal of martial law. Following the passage, the troops began to withdraw and boarded military buses at a parking lot by the Hangang River near the National Assembly, which departed at around 3:30 a.m. The Defense Ministry also withdrew the martial law command at 4 a.m. and canceled the emergency assembly at the ministry. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And staying at the parliament, the political fallout of the country's brief martial law continues as opposition lawmakers have filed a motion to impeach the president. Our correspondent Lee Shi-hu is standing by live on the line. Shi-hu, what is the latest at the National Assembly at this hour?
Right, Sunny, the evening draws near here at the National Assembly after a sleepless night and day of protests, as you can see behind me. Just a few hours ago, at a little over 2:40 this afternoon, the main opposition Democratic Party, along with 5 other minor parties, jointly submitted a motion to impeach President Yoon for declaring a martial law that goes against the Constitution. Take a listen.
All 191 lawmakers of the opposition signed a motion submitted. There was no way we could overlook the unconstitutional declaration of martial law and the internal disturbance and neglect the collapse of democracy.
Their plan now is to open a plenary session just about 7 hours from right now at 1 minute past midnight to report the bill to the whole assembly. They will then push to vote on the bill anytime from 24 to 72 hours after its initial report, as according to the law. This means the vote may take place anytime from early Friday morning, but the exact time will be decided through discussion between the lawmakers. For now, the opposition parties have asked their members to stand by until the weekend for not only the anticipated voting process, but also any other emergencies that may arise.
Right, I see. And what has been the response, Shi-hu, from ruling party lawmakers? I mean, do tell us a bit about their stance.
Yes, Sunny. So the ruling People Power Party held a closed-door meeting for nearly 4 hours this morning. Following the meeting, its chairman Han Dong-un shared that they discussed the need to potentially expel President Yoon from the party for creating a crisis that goes against the party. They also discussed the need to possibly dismiss the defense minister and the entire cabinet. But there was some sort of consensus on the need for the dismissal of the cabinet and the defense minister. But as for President Yoon and whether he should be rejected from the party, there were differences in opinions. Listen in.
As for the third suggestion, there were many opinions, so we've decided to continue our discussions on it, tentatively for the time being.
Now, those who raised concerns reportedly fear a potential transfer administration from the ruling PPP to the opposition if the ruling party expels away its president. Now, the PPP is expected to hold urgent meetings throughout the night, which I will keep you posted on throughout. Sunny?
All right, Shu, it's looking like another sleepless night for you at the National Assembly. In the time being, thank you so much for that coverage. Right, in related news, senior staff members at the presidential office, including Chief of Staff Chung, Jin-suk, have shared intentions to step down. Our correspondent Choi Soo-young reports.
Following the unprecedented moves by President Yoon last night, which brought about political chaos, his senior staff have all offered to resign. The presidential office announced on Wednesday morning that Chief of Staff and Senior Political Secretary Chung Jin-suk and other senior secretaries offered their resignations, including National Security Director Shin Won-sik and Director of National Policy Song Tae-yoon. The resignations were proffered during a meeting of senior secretaries held by Chung earlier in the day. If all of them accepted, the presidential office could be paralyzed, making it uncertain whether President Yoon will take this course of action. So far, President Yoon has not accepted any resignations. Meanwhile, President Yoon's schedule for Wednesday has been postponed. He was supposed to hold a meeting this morning to review the country's response to drug-related issues. In the aftermath of the end of the short-lived emergency martial law, the rest of the president's schedule has been put on hold for the immediate future. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Kim Myung-soo, has called on military commanders here to maintain a firm readiness posture to prevent North Korea from exploiting the latest political turmoil here in South Korea. Remarks to this end were made at an emergency meeting of key officials earlier on this Wednesday morning. Highlighting public safety as the military's priority, Kim called for close monitoring of activities around the border. Kim is also said to have spoken with U.S. Forces Korea Commander General Paul LaCamera to reaffirm commitment to stability and security against any potential North Korean provocation. And the president's short-lived martial law saw the South Korean currency weakening against major currencies and shares of South Korean firms on global stock markets plunging before regaining some ground. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin has more.
President Yoon's unexpected declaration of martial law, followed by its swift reversal, has led to volatility in both domestic and global stock markets, as well as the Korean currency. The surprise late-night announcement on Tuesday led the benchmark Kospi to close down 1.44% to 2,464, and the tech-heavy Kosdaq 1.98% to 677 after opening down 1.97% and 1.91% each. The Korean exchange, following review of market conditions, decided to open the market on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. and close at 3:30 p.m. as usual. In global markets, U.S. traded shares of Korean companies initially plunged before regaining ground after martial law was lifted. E-commerce platform Coupang fell as much as 9.8% on the New York Stock Exchange following the martial law declaration before recovering partially after martial law was lifted. Steelmaker POSCO Holdings saw a drop in the 4% range, and shares of KB Financial Group, LG Display, and KEPCO also fell sharply. But it wasn't just Korean stocks that experienced volatility, as the Korean won weakened to 1,442 won per dollar, its weakest level since October 2022. And while the currency recovered to the 1,410 range against the dollar after the martial law was lifted, it remains relatively weak as it stayed in that range when it opened at 1,418 and closed at 1,410 on Wednesday. In response, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok, during emergency meetings held with top economic officials late Tuesday night and on Wednesday morning, vowed to supply unlimited liquidity to stabilize financial and foreign exchange markets. To do so, the Bank of Korea announced on Wednesday morning that it will immediately buy additional repurchase agreements.
To ease economic concerns, we will closely engage with global credit agencies, key economic channels of countries like the U.S., domestic organizations, and financial markets.
He added that the government will also operate a task force that will monitor the finance market in real time to make sure that exports will not be hit hard. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
The foreign press was quick to cover the dramatic events here in South Korea, while Seoul's diplomatic partners reportedly watched with much caution the situation as it took place. Our Eun reports.
Following President Yoon's announcement to lift the martial law declaration, the U.S. Embassy and Consulate in the Republic of Korea issued a cautionary statement to its citizens on Wednesday, noting that the situation remains fluid. The embassy also announced plans to cancel routine consular appointments for U.S. citizens and visa applicants. The United States, saying that it had not been notified in advance about the South Korean president's initial decision to declare martial law on Tuesday night, expressed relief over its lifting. A White House spokesperson highlighting that democracy is the foundation of the South Korea-U.S. alliance said the U.S. would continue to monitor the situation closely. The New York Times expressed concern, highlighting South Korea's status as one of the U.S.'s most important allies in Asia, where tens of thousands of American troops are stationed. CNN said Yoon's decision to declare martial law is one of the most dramatic political decisions made by a South Korean leader in its modern democratic history, and plunges a major East Asia economy and a key regional U.S. ally into uncharted waters. CNN added that South Korea has been a vibrant democracy since the late 1980s, with guaranteed freedoms for its citizens and political figures. Despite the long history of the country's fractious and highly partisan politics, no leader in the democratic era has gone as far as declaring martial law. European countries have also expressed concern about the unfolding situation in South Korea. Spokespersons from the European Union, the British government, and the foreign ministries of Ireland and Germany have conveyed their deep concern, stating that they are closely monitoring developments. According to reports, the Swedish Prime Minister's visit to South Korea has been cancelled, along with his private meeting with domestic business CEOs. Meanwhile, Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba emphasized that Tokyo is watching the situation with exceptional and serious concern. Regarding his potential visit to South Korea, which had been anticipated for early January next year, Ishiba stated that nothing has been finalized. Chinese state media CCTV and other outlets ran live coverage, drawing widespread attention. Videos on Baidu, China's biggest search engine, attracted hundreds of thousands of views. The Chinese embassy in South Korea too issued a notice advising Chinese nationals residing in the country to remain vigilant. Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
As largely expected, Korea's age-old practice of jang-making has secured UNESCO recognition. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
The 19th session of the Intergovernmental Committee for UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage is currently underway in Paraguay. It is there that Korea's tradition of jang-making, or the making of fermented sauces using soybeans, has been added to the UN body's Intangible Cultural Heritage list. The inscription, which honors the long, rich cultural practice, was widely anticipated following a recommendation from the committee's deliberative body last month. According to the committee, the communal act of jang-making generates a sense of peace and belonging for the communities concerned. Jang-making has been around for centuries, dating as far back as the Three Kingdoms period from 57 BC to 668 AD. It was also during the Joseon dynasty that the practice of jang-making was so highly valued that royal storerooms were created specially for the fermented sauces and managed by court ladies. Some of the different varieties of jang include doenjang, or soybean paste, ganjang, or soy sauce, and gochujang, or red pepper paste. Jang-making is a Korean tradition that's often passed down through generations with a household's own recipe. The practice was first designated as a National Intangible Heritage in 2018 and now joins the UNESCO list as the 23rd Korean cultural practice or site. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Incheon International Airport's ambitious expansion of its second terminal is complete, and now this gateway into Korea is also hoping to take on a larger cultural role. Our An Sung-jin was there.
100 million passengers a year. That's how many people Incheon International Airport can now hold. After 7 years and approximately $3.6 billion, the expansion of Terminal 2 has been completed. Terminal 2 now allows an additional 23 million passengers, and as a whole can hold up to 52 million passengers. Combining Terminals 1 and 2, Incheon International Airport now ranks third in terms of passenger capacity after Hong Kong and Dubai, and the airport is second in terms of international cargo volume.
This airport supports our citizens and the economy as it allows exchange of culture with people from abroad. There are more efforts needed, and we will work together for the best airport in the world.
The expansion extended out Terminal 2 by 750 meters on each side and added 75 more aprons alongside a fourth runway. Incheon International Airport is now the only airport in the world which has two airport terminals that can each hold up to 50 million passengers.
I would like to make Incheon International Airport an airport where people want to come. An airport that offers various cultural components so people can come to enjoy even if they don't necessarily travel somewhere.
The expansion is expected to add more cultural elements to what exists already. This observatory allows visitors to enjoy the view of the runway.
I'm actually a big fan of planes, so even if I'm not traveling anywhere, I just come to see them. It's nice that the airport has areas like this so people like me can come and enjoy it.
It's not just Terminal 2 that's been upgraded. Passengers waiting at the airport can now enjoy this new art space that highlights Korean culture. The K-Culture Museum is located in the airport's transportation center. Organized by the Culture Ministry and the Korea Creative Content Agency, it hosts an immersive media art exhibition that showcases around 30 art pieces through large LED screens and mirrors.
We ended up passing by this area and my kid dragged me here. He really liked it, so I thought it was interesting and fun as well.
Incheon International Airport already saw a record figure for the number of passengers in the third quarter this year. and with the expansion of Terminal 2, that the number is only expected to further increase. 안성진, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. The conflict in Ukraine is continuing to escalate, with significant developments occurring both on the battlefield and in international diplomacy. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on Tuesday called for increased defenses in eastern Ukraine in response to substantial Russian advances in Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia. Ukrainian troops have withdrawn from several villages, and Zelenskyy has emphasized the urgent need for additional Western-supplied weaponry to counter the Russian offensives. On the same day, the United States announced a new military aid package worth $725 million, which includes rockets, landmines, and counter-drone systems. During German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's visit to Kyiv on Monday, Zelenskyy reiterated the need for more weapons and stronger diplomatic backing in order to achieve a just peace with Russia. Scholz reaffirmed Germany's strong support for Ukraine and encouraged continued diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict. Ahead of the upcoming NATO ministerial meeting, Ukraine's diplomacy chief Andriy Sybiha urged NATO partners to provide at least 20 air defense systems to help protect against Russian aerial attacks. Ukraine has also conducted tests on new homemade missiles and is increasing missile production. Concerns have been raised about the potential collapse of the ceasefire agreement after exchanges of fire between Israel and Hezbollah. The Lebanon-based militant group fired 2 mortars at an Israeli army base on Monday, saying it was a response to repeated violations of the ceasefire by Israel. Israel responded with airstrikes targeting southern Lebanon, marking its largest wave of attacks since last week's ceasefire was announced. According to Lebanon's health ministry, at least 11 people were killed in the strike. The IDF said operations in southern Lebanon aimed to address actions by Hezbollah that threatened Israeli civilians and violated mutual agreements, while Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the ceasefire would continue to be enforced with an iron fist. U.S. President Joe Biden made a historic visit to Angola on Monday, becoming the first sitting American president to travel to the country. During his visit, Biden met with Angolan President João Lourenço to discuss economic and security partnerships and emphasized Angola's importance as a key U.S. ally in the region. Biden announced $3 billion of investment in the Lobito Corridor Railway project, connecting Angola, Zambia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo to facilitate the export of minerals such as cobalt and copper. The initiative is viewed as a strategic effort to counter China's economic influence in Africa. Biden also visited the National Slavery Museum, where he paid tribute to the millions of Angolans who were forcibly taken during the transatlantic slave trade. He also announced a $229,000 grant to support the museum's restoration. Europe's most expensive Christmas tree was unveiled in Munich on Tuesday with an almost 3-meter gold tree made of 2024 Vienna Philharmonic coins worth over $5.4 million. The coins are manually arranged on a specially designed frame with a gold Vienna Philharmonic coin weighing approximately 570 grams, serving as the star on top. The coins showcase an image of a pipe organ located in the Golden Hall of the Vienna Musikverein on one side, with a selection of classical music instruments featured on the other. Although the tree itself is not for sale, the individual coins are available for purchase. 최지희, Arirang News.
Clear skies prevailed in Seoul today. However, dry weather advisories are issued for eastern parts of Gangwon-do province and Ulsan country in Gyeongsang-buk-do province. Winds are strong in these areas as well. Small embers can lead to a large fire, so you should pay attention to safety. Tomorrow morning, temperatures will start at -1 degree Celsius in Seoul. Rain or snow is forecast in southern parts of Gyeonggi-do province, southwestern parts of Gangwon-do province, and the Chungcheong-do provinces. Most of it will stop by Friday morning. Tomorrow, Daegu will start off at 1 degree, Gwangju 2 degrees. Daytime temperatures will move up to 7 in Seoul, Daejeon, Daegu, and Gyeongju 10 degrees, Busan 12 degrees. This weekend, the Jeollado provinces and Jeju Island will also see occasional rain or snow. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour. Coming up next is our daily panel session on the latest political events here in South Korea.
How to survive in Korea. Cafes. Step 1. Find a seat. Before ordering, find a seat. Laptop ID, smartphone, jacket, whatever that can mark your territory. But no bites. It's a little too big. Step 2. Pick up. We do not ask or call your name. We call out, B69번 고객님. The buzzer will vibrate when your order is ready at the counter. Wait, got your straw? Keep the top of the wrapper on. Doing this is more hygienic. Step 3. Cafe etiquette. If you need to use your laptop, find a seat next to a socket. No extra charge for using electricity. But if you're staying over 3 hours, how about ordering another drink or dessert? Step 4. Last bite standing. There's a mysterious custom in Korea. The last bite standing. When there's about 1 bite left of that cake, nobody will go for it. You might be tempted, but don't be hasty. Right before you get up, take the last piece, saying that you simply can't waste food, or just leave it. It will save a few calories. Did you survive at the cafe? Did someone behind the counter catch your eye? Go for the same drink every single day.
오늘도 아이스 말차 라떼 드실 거죠?
You might make an impression.
Hi, Chef Ryan here. Today we're going to make bungeokbang, or a fish-shaped cake.
Late Tuesday evening, President Yoon went on air to declare martial law nationwide, triggering much public concern and confusion. Now, soon after, members of the military were deployed to the National Assembly, and a scuffle ensued as opposition lawmakers sought to enter the premises to vote against the measure. Then 6 hours after his first abrupt TV appearance, President Yoon returned to the air to lift the martial law. On Press Perspective today, we touch upon the foreign media coverage of these dramatic events that took place between the late hours of Tuesday and the early hours of this Wednesday. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Wednesday, December 4th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. Today, our panel of foreign correspondents share with us media coverage about South Korea's martial law, the first in 44 years and perhaps the shortest in history. For this, I have Andres Sanchez-Brown, a correspondent for Spanish news agency EFE Spain. Andres, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having us here, Sunny, as always.
I also have Stephen Borwick, a staff writer for Japanese news magazine Nikkei Asia. Stephen, it's good to have you on.
Nice to be here.
Right, Andres, let's begin with details of the coverage by the media over in the US and Europe regarding Korea's brief martial law, Andres.
Yes, well, I think the coverage from English-speaking media, from European media, was pretty similar in the sense that this took everyone absolutely by surprise. And I think a good example of this was while I was at the National Assembly, Stephen was there with me last night. I at least was getting texts, for example, from correspondents deployed in other countries in Asia, in the region, and the question was basically the same. What is going on? And the big question was also why? Is this, the fact that President Yoon Suk-yeol spoke of anti-state activities, of the opposition behaving as a pro-North Korean forces, the reason to implement this martial law? Of course, most media was surprised to hear this. South Korea is a country that projects an image of a strong and vibrant democracy, a country with tremendous soft power right now and prestige in the international arena. So this took everyone by surprise. So, foreign media, at least the English-speaking one and the European one, started digging little by little in the fact that this seemed to be more politically motivated because President Yoon felt that the opposition was cornering him increasingly by railroading a heavily cut budget bill for next year, and also for trying to impeach the prosecutor general and the person in charge of the audit agency of the government. So, of course, the fact that all this seems to lead to political paralysis looks not very good, especially in media from European countries, which is my case, the case of my company. Countries in Europe more and more frequently are used to being affected by political paralysis. So this doesn't really look good in the eyes of European countries, having to implement this martial law for apparently political reasons.
Right, and before we delve deeper into the reasons behind the declaration of the martial law, Stephen, what can you tell us about the coverage by the media in this region, including, of course, Japan, China, and perhaps Russia as well, Stephen?
Well, I work for a Japanese company, so I can say that we worked pretty hard starting last night and all day today to try to do the best we could to understand where this came from, what Yoon was perhaps hoping to achieve, and the broader effects of it, like how it would affect the publication I work for is quite business and economy focused, so we tried to shed a bit of light on how this was affecting markets, how this might affect business sentiment, consumer sentiment, and South Korea's kind of standing in the international business climate. In China, I mean, China is a bit of a difficult case because there's not a high standard of press freedom there. That's also the case with Russia. But I think in China, people have just been, like people all over the world, really, have just been trying to figure out what was going on. I know that some of the key search terms on China's social media were things like martial law, like Lee Jae-myung, the leader of the South Korean opposition. Just people kind of grasping for the facts and trying to figure out where this came from and where it might go. In Russia, I saw that the foreign ministry put out a statement kind of discouraging South Koreans residing in the country from taking part in any political activities. I guess that was a kind of stability-minded message from Moscow. But, you know, this story is, you know, perhaps the kind of peak excitement part of it is over, but it's this is the beginning of a longer process. So I think the media all over the world is going to be watching what happens from now.
Right. Andres, quite a number of U.S. media outlets touched upon the reality that the Biden administration had been left in the dark about the Yoon administration's decision to declare martial law, despite their bilateral alliance, and of course the fact that the U.S. has 28,500 soldiers stationed here in the country. Could you tell us a bit more about the concerns that were raised?
Yes, this was, to be honest, surprising once again, and in the case of the U.S. administration apparently being in the dark, it was, I guess the word is unsettling, especially given how back in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, you know, the Korean government of Park Chung-hee, or the military junta of Chung Do-hwan, would actually keep the U.S. embassy on the loop of what they were planning in terms of policy or implementing martial laws, etc. Of course, representatives of the U.S. administration voiced their surprise, but they also underlined the fact that the alliance with Korea is ironclad, because it is an alliance that is, you know, deeply institutional. It doesn't really, it is above whoever's leading both countries. It's a strategic, long-term running alliance. Nonetheless, the fact that President Yoon decided to activate this martial law will probably raise one of the few things that international analysts seem to agree upon, which was the fact that his government had vowed for so-called strategic clarity, you know, drawing nearer to countries with similar values, with respect for the rule of law, etc., and you know, voicing how it was important that these blocks of countries opposed the tyranny in countries like Russia or North Korea. So all in all, not a good thing for Yoon's presidency once again.
Stephen, I'd like to take a few steps back now. The New York Times published an English-translated version of President Yoon Suk-yeol's announcement declaring martial law. For the sake of our viewers who may not have heard it, could you give us the gist of his announcement?
It's an interesting piece of rhetoric. I mean, Yoon starts. You know, I watched his address on TV last night, and the way that he introduced this was he said that martial law was a gesture that was necessary to protect South Korean democracy. I mean, which is kind of counterintuitive if you think of it, because it's something that results in the very widespread suspension of democratic rights, the right to assembly, the right to free movement, freedom of speech, etc. But he characterized the political opposition as being kind of acting on behalf of North Korea and acting to paralyze the legislature and being very sort of ill-intentioned. And so he said that he needed to step forward and to, you know, without any kind of consultation with the public, without any kind of democratic process, that he needed to go ahead and enact a pretty drastic measure of martial law. The part that for some reason kind of stood out to me and that I put in my first story, the story that I wrote very quickly last night, was at the end he said, "Please trust me." And, to me, that was interesting because it was a kind of acknowledgement of his own rhetoric and his own vision having some very serious shortcomings, that like the only way that the people of this country were going to buy into this vision is if they were able to invest a kind of personal trust in Yoon, which, if you take a step back and you think about it, is kind of surprising, because this is a president who has suffered from very low approval ratings throughout his term. And so even with the benefit of less than 24 hours hindsight, if you look at this announcement, the flaws in Yoon's plans here are really quite obvious. And commentators today, like even on the kind of conservative side of South Korea's political spectrum, have been raising questions as to like, why did Yoon go ahead with this when it had to have been pretty obvious that it would end up the way it did, with the call for martial law being struck down in the National Assembly. And that's just one of many interesting questions that we're left with today. But I imagine historians will be reading over this speech and finding interesting nuggets in it for a long time to come.
Right. Well, for now, though, the martial law is making a lot of headlines, not just here in the country, but also beyond its borders. And Andreas, as you mentioned earlier, there was quite a bit of coverage about the potential reasons behind this grave decision to declare martial law. What were the reasons that were highlighted, Andreas?
Well, foreign media started highlighting the fact that, as I said before, that trimmed down budget was railroaded by the Democratic Party that controls the National Assembly. And of course, the Democratic Party was also trying to go after the prosecutor general and the person responsible for the audit agency that is in charge of monitoring all state accounts. This is mostly an account of the fact that authorities have been apparently unwilling to further investigate or even impeach, for example, First Lady Kim Gun-hee for different alleged wrongdoing, such as receiving the famous Dior bag, or manipulating stocks more than a decade ago, or maybe even intruding in state affairs. Now, I think, once again, all media are right now left with the questions that Stephen was posing. What seemed to be the end game here? What made President Yoon and his aides think that it was a good idea to activate a law that is designed for wartime or a real national emergency, and that this would be accepted by the whole political spectrum or South Korean society? This obviously is not 1979 or 1980 Korea. This is a country with a vibrant, democratic, strong civil society, and I think that was proved yesterday night. And the fact that there were, yes, of course, scuffles around the National Assembly, but nothing, no strong, violent episodes took place. So once again, the fact that also the government thought that allied countries of Korea would think that the implementation of this martial law was a good idea. I'm almost positive that had this martial law been longer lived, then of course they wouldn't have approved of its implementation.
Right, and perhaps staying with what Andreas has just said, Stephen, there are pundits who are shedding light on the implications, broader implications, that is, of this latest political move by President Yoon on Korea's democracy as a whole. What have they been saying, Stephen?
Well, it's very tempting to, in the immediate aftermath of something like this, like look for big kind of takeaways as to what it means and talk about implications. We need to be a little bit careful about that, though. I think, like, just for me, there's a couple of kind of modest things that I think warrant highlighting in the immediate aftermath of this. I just think what happened here, I think, was very much a domestic thing. So, the U.S. or China, it's useful to have that kind of international background in mind. But I think really this was a domestic matter. This was Yoon responding to changes and momentum in the domestic political climate here. And, there may be alarm bells going off and kind of old stories about what this might mean for South Korean democracy, or, what does this say about the state of South Korean democracy? But I agree with what Andres laid out. I mean, I think more than anything, the lesson is that South Korean democracy is quite healthy, because we had a scenario where a leader tried to illegitimately seize power, and the opposition was able to go through peaceful and legal means to stop that from happening. And here we are just, the following day, and life here is back to normal. Politics is going ahead, and we're going to have some kind of more lasting conclusion from this soon. But, I think, if anything, South Korea has proved both the stability of its politics and its society. And, I spoke to one middle-aged woman last night on the scene who told me that ultimately this is going to be a learning opportunity for Korea. Koreans are going to learn of the value of their democracy, and going to learn that their democracy requires continuous safeguarding. So to me, those are the takeaways, and those are the implications.
All right, then. So while a lesson has been learned in democracy, Andres, some observers are saying, though, that the political repercussions of this particular incident will be very extensive. What do you say?
Well, I think that we are already starting to see some of these repercussions. We just learned a few hours ago that the opposition at the National Assembly approved of forwarding a motion to try to impeach President Yoon. Now, the idea is that it will probably have to be voted once formally approved. It has to be voted within 72 hours. So we can expect, for example, for a vote to take place in the National Assembly on Friday or Saturday. A majority of 2/3 would be needed for President Yoon to be impeached. This is a possibility that many experts consider to be achievable, because the opposition holds 192 out of 300 seats in the National Assembly. It only needs around 8 members of Yoon's party, the PPP, to approve of this motion for impeachment. And we've already heard members of his party, or the leader of the PPP, Han Dong-hun, actually calling out, saying that this was the wrong decision by Yoon. But once again, I think I'm gonna underline once again what this middle-aged woman told Steve. I think this is a turning point, and it's an important moment for Korea in terms of safeguards. There has to be debate from going on from now, if even with or without impeachment, of what it means for Korea to have such an emergency martial law. Of course, Korea is considered by many a beleaguered democracy, because it is in a region where it has China, North Korea, Russia surrounding it. But of course, the fact that apparently someone could use martial law for political reasons undermines South Korea as a developed and democratic economy. Now, probably, yes, many people say this is going to have, at least in the short term, costs for Korea's image in the diplomatic arena, and probably in the financial and economic area as well. But once again, the silver lining is the fact that Korean society is proving everyone in the Korean political spectrum that Korea is actually a healthy democracy, that the dark times are over, that nobody wants bloodshed in this country anymore.
Right. Stephen, I'd like to touch upon something that Andres just talked about as well. Economists, though, they are saying the ensuing political turmoil will perhaps threaten the Korean economy. What more can you tell us?
To answer that, we have to kind of flag that the near-term economic projections for Korea were already somewhat troubling. I mean, this is an economy that's had very meager growth over the past couple of quarters and has had its economic growth projections trimmed recently. So, what the kind of trickle-down effects will be of an attempt at martial law on the real economy, I don't know. I don't expect it to be all of that significant. I think people will probably consume and buy and produce roughly what they were going to before. But when it gets to things like this stock markets and other kind of economic measures, things that are based more upon sentiment, I think you can see bigger changes there. You could see just last night and over the past since this all started, there has been declines in the Kospi and the South Korean currency. The won took a pretty significant decline, but I mean, all in all, those I think will probably be relatively short-lived, but we do have to temper any kind of optimism on that front with there is the real question of this country being in a kind of economic slowdown, and with uncertainty at the top, could that be prolonged? Could we see, inactivity at the National Assembly when, certain things are needed to boost business? Is there going to be a kind of inertia as we wait for greater clarity on the economy? I mean, this is why stability is important, because business people want to know that they can invest and they can produce goods in an environment where there's, a stable path to consumers and a stable and reliable business climate. So we will have to see, but I think, over the long term, things will even out.
Right. Hopefully, fingers crossed for that. I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Stephen, thank you so much for your insights. And Andres, as always, thank you very much for your thoughts.
Thank you.
Right. Well, that is all the time we have for this edition of Press Perspective. We return same time tomorrow for more on the political fallout here on the local front.